Maggie Wilson's world shatters when she uncovers a phone bill revealing her husband Robert's secret life. After 50 years of marriage, she learns he's maintained multiple families in Philadelphia, Boston, and Chicago, each unaware of the others. Confronting Robert, Maggie faces his lies and a potential Ponzi scheme unraveling his finances. Devastated yet resilient, she flees to Florence, Italy, to rediscover herself. As the FBI investigates Robert's fraud, Maggie's journey of self-discovery begins. But new revelations about another wife and daughter threaten to pull her back into the chaos. What else will she uncover, and can she truly start anew? If Maggie's story of betrayal and reinvention gripped you, join our community. Subscribe for more compelling tales that unravel life's complexities. Share where you're tuning in from, and don't miss tomorrow's special story. Click now to stay connected and support our channel for more unforgettable narratives. As I rummage through the attic, the air thick with dust and nostalgia, 50 years of marriage felt like a tangible weight. Each box held fragments of a life I cherished. Faded photos, handwritten notes, and keepsakes that told a story I thought was mine alone. My fingers caught on a phone bill, its paper brittle but the numbers vivid. A Philadelphia number, unfamiliar and relentless, appeared week after week, some calls stretching into hours. A quiet dread bloomed in my chest, an instinct I couldn't shake. That evening, with Robert at his investment club, I dialed the number, my pulse roaring in my ears. A woman's voice answered, warm and inviting. "Wilson Residence," she said, her words echoing my identity, my husband's last name. My last name. But this wasn't my home. My hands trembled as I murmured, "I must have the wrong number," and ended the call. In that instant, the ground beneath my life split open, revealing a secret Robert had woven a secret life just 2 hours away. At 70, after half a century together, I faced the wreckage of my trust. Yet tucked away in my keepsake box was a passport I'd hidden since before our wedding, a modest account my mother had pressed me to keep, and a vow I'd made to myself, never expecting to fulfill it. This was the moment I lost the life I'd known and began to discover who I could be. I met Robert Wilson in 1972 at a faculty mixer, a swirl of youth and ambition. I was 20, a junior at Barnard, my soul alight with dreams of teaching literature in far-flung places. Robert, 22, walked in with a charisma that turned heads, his suit impeccable, his smile magnetic. My roommate elbowed me, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. That guy's destined for greatness. How right she was, though not in the way we imagined. We married a year after I graduated, my planned semester in Florence exchanged for a honeymoon's romance. "We'll go back one day," Robert assured me, his voice brimming with promise as I stored my passport in a keepsake box, a relic of dreams postponed. "When we're settled." That word, settled, defined my next 50 years. I set aside the overseas job I'd been offered, choosing instead to root our lives in Riverside, Connecticut. Our colonial home on Maple Street flourished with a garden I nurtured with care. I taught literature at the local high school, while Robert soared at Wilson Financial. Our daughter Jennifer arrived in our 3rd year, a radiant joy who reshaped my world. I scaled back from teaching to focus on her, marveling as she grew into a brilliant, driven woman. So like her father, she married Daniel, Jennifer had Tyler, our grandson, and crafted a life that mirrored ours in its rhythm and warmth. Sunday dinners were our anchor. Our family gathered around the table, swapping stories of Jennifer's career milestones or Tyler's baseball victories. To the outside world, we were a portrait of prosperity and love. When Robert hit 65, retirement wasn't the serene shift we'd envisioned. "Just consulting," he said lightly, waving off as he continued weekly trips to New York and occasional conferences that took him away for days. I never doubted him. Why would I? Our life was built on trust, or so I believed. But that trust fractured when I found the phone bill. The next morning after Robert left for the city, I redialed the number, my heart fortified against the fear gnawing inside. "Hello," the woman answered again. "I'm calling about Robert Wilson," I said, my voice firmer than my shaking hands. A pause, heavy with unspoken truths. "My husband isn't home. Who's this?" she asked. "This is Maggie Wilson," I replied, his wife. The silence that followed was a chasm. engulfing us both. A stifled sound escaped her, a blend of shock and pain. "We need to talk," she whispered, her voice cracking. Eleanor Moran was 68, an art gallery owner whose life had intersected with Robert's at a Philadelphia seminar 23 years ago. She hadn't known about me at first, falling for a man who seemed entirely hers. When she learned of his Connecticut wife, her love for him was already deep, and Robert had spun a tale to keep her close. "He said you had an arrangement," Eleanor told me at a cafe meeting, her words a gut punch. "That you preferred independence, that your marriage was in name only." I choked on the irony. Independence? I'd spent 50 years building our home, supporting Robert's ambitions, raising Jennifer. There was no arrangement, just my steadfast love. Eleanor's hands, trembling, displayed a diamond ring that echoed my own, shook as she shared photos. Robert at her family's holidays, on trips I thought were for work, at a beach ceremony, not legal but sacred to them. "He has keys to my home," she said, her voice barely audible. "Clothes in my house. He's part of my family's lives." Her pain echoed mine, a shared mourning for the man we both thought we understood. I drove home in a trance, my thoughts reframing decades, the frequent business trips, the separate checking investment account for investment opportunities, the locked phone. Robert's precision, which I'd once found comforting, now revealed a chilling double life. In our bedroom, I unearthed my keepsake box, finding my expired passport and my mother's letter from the eve of my wedding. "Keep something for yourself, Maggie," she'd written. "A woman needs an escape hatch, even in love." At 21, I dismissed her advice as old-fashioned. Now at 70, it was a beacon. That night, I served Robert's favorite salmon, listened to his New York stories, and retired early, pleading a headache. In the guest room, I planned, my mind racing with possibilities. The next day, I met with Marcus Chen, a lawyer Jennifer had trusted. 50 years, he said, he murmured, shaken. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Wilson." "Maggie," I corrected myself, as Mrs. Wilson seems to mean two people. He explained Connecticut's divorce laws, equitable distribution, the weight of Robert's deceit, the possibility that his secret accounts were marital assets. When I mentioned a Philadelphia house, Marcus looked confused. "What house?" I realized Eleanor had said Robert had keys to her home, not theirs. Had I misheard, or was there more to uncover? At the bank, I checked my personal secret account, a modest sum unknown to Robert, seated by my mother's inheritance. It was sufficient for my plans. I renewed my passport, booked a flight to Florence, and reached out to a real estate agent there. Abroad, my long-abandoned dream was mine at last, delayed but timely. I kept Jennifer out of the case, unwilling to break her love for her father until I grasped the full betrayal's extent. I told her I was mulling an Italy trip, a retirement dream. "That's amazing, Mom," she said, delighted. "Dad always says you should travel." Travel more. His words through her stung. Had he been laying groundwork to ease his absence, framing me as self-sufficient? The idea sickened me. 3 days on, I faced Robert. Post-dinner, as he stood in the living room, papers in hand, I spoke from the doorway. "I met Eleanor yesterday," I said, studying him. A subtle shift crossed his face before he played confused. "Eleanor? I don't know an Eleanor." His lie was polished, a skill perfected over years. "Eleanor Moran," I said, "from Philadelphia, your wife." "Wife." His mask slipped briefly, then reset. "Maggie, that's ridiculous," he scoffed. "Are you all right?" I set down the phone bill and bank transfer records. 20 years, Robert, half our marriage." "Marriage?" His eyes darted to the evidence, then to me, a calculating spark I knew from his problem-solving days. "It's not what you think," I said. He insisted, "It never is," I shot back. "I've seen a lawyer." That hit him. His image, his reputation, couldn't survive a scandal. "Let's talk this through," he said, standing. "No lawyers needed." "Like with Eleanor?" I asked. "Does she know about her, about Jennifer? Tyler?" His face blanched, his control fraying. That night, Robert took the guest room. By morning, he was gone, claiming a New York meeting, but I knew he was rushing to Philadelphia to manage Eleanor. I called Jennifer, summoning her. Telling her about her father's betrayal was agony, each revelation a scar. She sat at our kitchen table, a place of family memories, stunned. "Impossible," she said. She whispered, "Dad couldn't." I thought so, too, I said gently, but I've seen her. The proof. Her tears flowed as she shook her head. There's an explanation. He's devoted to two families, I said, corrected, my heart breaking for her. She left, vowing to confront him, her world shaken. Later, an unknown number rang. Connor, Eleanor's nephew, his voice unsteady. Robert doesn't have two lives, he has three. My legs buckled. I sank to the hallway bench. Three, I asked? Catherine Winters, in Boston, he said. I saw them at a conference, him calling her his wife. The room spun. Does Eleanor know? I asked. No, he said. He told me it was undercover work. I thanked him, numb as the betrayal deepened. Next morning, I accessed our safe deposit box, snapping photos of wills, deeds, and Robert's heirloom watch, adding to my evidence. Jennifer called, wavering. Dad says it's a misunderstanding. Eleanor's a widow he helped. Helped him lie. His lie didn't shock me now. What about the photos, the accounts? I asked. She faltered. He says it's complex. I urged her to probe, but her doubt lingered. That evening, Robert returned, finding me in the garden, wine glass in hand, gazing at my roses. Maggie, he said warily, I told Jennifer it's a misunderstanding. I sipped my wine. Which one, Eleanor or Catherine or in Boston? His face drained. Connor called me, I said. He saw you with her, your other wife. Wife. He crumpled, aged in an instant. It's complicated, he said. Mumbled. It's simple, I said. You lied to us all. All. I stopped him from nearing. What will you do? He asked, finally honest. I'm going to Florence, I said, turning away, leaving him in the dusk of our broken life. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality, as I looked at Robert, his face a mixture of shock and confusion. I'm taking that semester abroad I gave up for you 50 years ago, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions churning inside me. For decades, I had buried my dreams, my desires, my very sense of self to build a life with this man. And now, at 70, I was done. His eyes widened, his mouth opening as if to protest, but I pressed on. Florence, Maggie, I continued, anticipating his plea to work this out. The house, our accounts, they'll all be here when I return. My lawyer will handle the divorce proceedings. Until then, I suggest you decide which of your lives you want to keep, because this one with me is over. Robert took a step toward me, his expression hardening, the lines on his face deepening with a mix of anger and desperation. You can't just leave, he said, his voice low but sharp. What about Jennifer? What about our reputation in the community? The absurdity of his words struck me, and I let out a laugh, a genuine, unrestrained laugh that echoed in the quiet room, surprising us both. Reputation? The man who had juggled 3 separate lives for decades, weaving a web of deceit so intricate it was almost admirable, was worried about reputation. Robert, I said, my tone laced with bitter amusement, you've maintained 3 families, 3 identities, for years. Concern for reputation seems a bit late now, don't you think? His face flushed, and for a moment I saw the man I'd married, the charming, confident banker who could talk his way out of anything. I've given you everything, he said, his voice rising, a defensive edge creeping in. This house, a comfortable life, security. And I gave you 50 years, I cut in, my own voice rising now, fueled by a fire I hadn't known I still possessed. I gave up my dreams, my career, my sense of who I am. I'm 70 years old, Robert. How much more do you think you're entitled to take from me? The words poured out, each one a release of the resentment I'd carried silently for decades. I could feel the weight of those years, the compromises, the sacrifices, the moments I'd chosen him over myself, lifting with every syllable. He stared at me, his eyes searching my face as if he were seeing a stranger. And perhaps he was. The Maggie he knew, the compliant, accommodating wife who had smoothed over his absences and excused his late nights, was unraveling before him. She was disappearing, replaced by a woman who was finally claiming her own life. Where will you go? He asked at last, his voice smaller, almost defeated. Florence, I said simply. After that, I don't know. I stood, brushing imaginary dust from my slacks, a gesture that felt like shedding the last remnants of the life I was leaving behind. I've booked a flight for next week. You can stay here until then, but in the guest room. As I moved past him toward the house, he grabbed my arm, his grip urgent but not forceful. "The money, Maggie," he said, his voice tight with something that sounded like fear. "You don't understand. It's not as simple as dividing everything. There are complications." I gently pried his hand away, meeting his cranium with a calm I hadn't felt in years. "I'm sure there are," I said. "That's for the lawyers to sort out." Inside, I climbed the stairs to the bedroom we'd shared for half a century. The space felt both familiar and alien now, filled with objects that told the story of our life together. Curtains I'd sewn with care, a wedding portrait that once symbolized love, but now felt like a relic of a lie. I began sorting through my belongings with a methodical precision, deciding what would come with me to Florence and what could stay behind. 50 years in this house had accumulated so much: china sets, photo albums, knickknacks from vacations we'd taken as a family. But as I held each item, I realized how little of it truly mattered. My mother's handwritten recipe cards, worn at the edges from years of use, a small watercolor Jennifer had painted in high school, vibrant and full of promise. My collection of first edition Jane Austen novels, their pages yellowed but cherished. My teaching credentials, tucked away in a drawer, a reminder of the career I'd abandoned. The jade earrings my father had given me before he passed, their cool weight a connection to a man who had always believed in me. And my passport, its pages blank for decades, now a symbol of the road I was finally taking. The next day I met with Marcus, my lawyer, bringing new information about Catherine in Boston. As he reviewed my notes, his brow furrowed. "This changes things," he said, his voice measured but serious. "Multiple households, potentially multiple fraudulent identities. This goes beyond typical marital asset concealment." "What does that mean for me?" I asked, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and determination. "It means we have grounds for a comprehensive forensic accounting of all his finances," Marcus replied, his pen tapping against the desk. "It also means criminal charges could be on the table. Fraud, tax evasion, possibly more." He looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "Are you prepared for this to potentially become a criminal matter?" The question stopped me cold. Despite everything, Robert's betrayal, his lies, his secret lives, he was still the man who had held my hand through my parents' funerals, who had paced the hospital halls when Jennifer broke her arm at 12, who had taught our grandson Tyler to ride a bike. Did I want to see him in handcuffs, his life unraveling in a courtroom? "Let's focus on the divorce for now," I said finally. "I want what's rightfully mine, no more, no less." Marcus nodded, his expression understanding. "Fair enough." He then walked me through the legal implications of leaving the country during divorce proceedings, helped me draft a formal separation agreement, and advised me on protecting my financial interests. By the time I left his office, I felt armed with clarity and purpose, a woman ready to reclaim her life. That evening, Jennifer came to the house. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face etched with strain as she stood awkwardly in the kitchen where I was chopping vegetables for dinner. "Mom," she began, her voice trembling, "Dad's told me everything." I didn't look up, focusing instead on the rhythmic motion of the knife. "Has he?" I asked, my tone neutral. "All of it, including Catherine in Boston?" Her sharp intake of breath was answer enough. "There's someone in Boston too?" she whispered, her voice breaking. I set the knife down and turned to face her, my heart aching at the vulnerability in her eyes. She looked so young, so lost, like the little girl who used to crawl into my lap for comfort. "Sit down, Jenny," I said gently. She sank into a chair, and I sat across from her, taking her hands in mine. "Your father has built elaborate lives with at least 3 women in 3 different cities," I said, my voice steady but soft. "I've spoken with Eleanor in Philadelphia. Connor, her nephew, confirmed Catherine in Boston. There may be others we don't know about." "Why?" Jennifer's voice was barely audible, her eyes searching mine for answers I didn't have. "Why would he do this?" "I don't know," I admitted, squeezing her hands. "Maybe it was power or ego or some need I couldn't fulfill. It doesn't matter now. She looked down, tears welling in her eyes. He told me about Eleanor, she said slowly. Said it was a mistake, that he got in too deep helping her after her husband died and didn't know how to get out. He said he always loved you, that he was going to end things with her. I smiled, a paranoid, knowing smile. And you believed him because he's your father, and because he's always been so good at telling people exactly what they want to hear. Her tears spilled over and she nodded, her shoulders shaking. I don't know what to think anymore. You don't have to choose Soraya, I told her, my voice gentle but firm. He's still your father. That doesn't change, was. But I need to do what's right for me now, and that means leaving. Leaving? Her eyes widened, panic flickering across her face. Leaving where? Florence, I said. Just for a while, I need space to think, to figure out who I am outside of this marriage. Florence, Italy? She said, her voice rising with disbelief. Mom, you've never traveled alone. You don't speak Italian. You're 70 years old. Yes, to all of that, I agreed, a spark of defiance igniting in my chest. And yet here I am, booking tickets and renting an apartment. But why Florence? She pressed, her confusion palpable. I took a deep breath, the memories flooding back. When I was young, I had the chance to spend a semester abroad teaching in Florence. It was my dream, a chance to immerse myself in art, culture, a new language. But I gave it up to marry your father, to build this life. I don't regret you or Tyler, but I regret losing that part of myself. Now I have the chance to see what might have been, to live a piece of that other life. Jennifer stayed for dinner, and we talked more openly than we had in years. She shared her own struggles, her marriage to Daniel, Tyler's challenges in school, her abandoned dream of becoming an artist. I never told you because I didn't want to disappoint Dad, she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. He was so proud when I got my business degree. And now, I asked, watching her carefully. She shrugged, her eyes distant. I'm good at what I do, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd had the courage to choose differently. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet house, the weight of our conversations settling over me. Choices. The ones we make, the ones made for us by circumstance or expectation. I'd chosen Robert, chosen family, chosen stability. I didn't regret those choices entirely. They'd given me Jennifer, Tyler, moments of joy, but I regretted losing myself so completely in them. I'd forgotten I could choose differently. The week passed in a blur of preparations. Robert kept his distance, likely dealing with the fallout of his other lives. When we did cross paths, our interactions were strained, polite, and brief. 3 days before my departure, he cornered me in his study, where I was gathering financial documents. Maggie, you need to reconsider this trip, he said, his voice tight with urgency. There are financial matters you don't understand. Then explain them to me, I replied, my tone even but unyielding. He hesitated, his jaw tightening. It's complicated, investment structures, tax considerations. Trust me when I say it's better if we handle this together. The way we always have. The way we always have, I repeated, the words bitter on my tongue. You making decisions and me trusting you blindly. That approach has worked out rather poorly for me, wouldn't you say? His composure faltered, a flicker of fear in his eyes. I've always provided for you, he said, his voice rising. For 50 years, you've never wanted for anything. Except honesty, I countered, my voice sharp. Except fidelity. Except the respect of being treated as a partner, not a convenience. He ran a hand through his silver hair, a gesture so familiar it pierced my heart despite everything. You have no idea what you're doing, he said, his tone shifting to something almost pleading. If you leave now, if you push this divorce through without understanding the financial implications, are you threatening me, Robert? I asked, my voice steady. Not threatening, he said quickly. Warning, there are investments, arrangements that need to be managed carefully. If you disrupt them now, then what? I pressed, but he didn't answer. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes, and it sent a chill through me. That night, I called Sophia, my closest friend from my teaching days. After hearing a condensed version of the situation, she didn't hesitate. I'm coming over, she declared. Pack your bags tonight. You're staying with me until your flight. That's not necessary, I protested, but she cut me off. Maggie, your husband has been living a triple life and is now warning you about mysterious financial arrangements. You're not staying in that house another night. I looked around the bedroom, the curtains I'd sewn, the wedding portrait that now felt like a mockery, and realized she was right. This house, once a sanctuary, was no longer safe. 2 hours later, I was settled in Sophia's guest room across town, my essentials packed in 2 suitcases, my important documents secured, my passport tucked safely in my purse. I still can't believe it, Sophia said, pouring us each a glass of brandy. Robert always seemed so devoted to you. He was an excellent actor, I replied, sipping the warm liquid. Or maybe he compartmentalized so well he believed his own lies. What did Marcus say about these financial warnings, which she asked? To document everything, forward any communications from Robert to him, and not to sign anything, I said. Sophia nodded approvingly. Smart. Now, about Florence, do you have somewhere to stay? I showed her the apartment I'd rented online, a small but sunny place near the Arno River, within walking distance of Florence's historic center. It's perfect, she said, squeezing my hand. And what will you do there? Breathe, I said simply. Walk, look at art, learn some Italian, figure out who Maggie Wilson is when she's not Robert's wife. The next morning, my phone buzzed with notifications. Jennifer had called 3 times, and there were texts from friends and acquaintances. Confused, I opened the local news website and froze. Robert's face stared back at me under a glaring headline. Prominent banker Robert Wilson under investigation for financial irregularities. The FBI had raided his office at Wilson Financial the previous evening, investigating allegations of a Ponzi scheme that had potentially defrauded investors of millions. Robert had been questioned, but released pending further investigation. My phone rang again. Jennifer. Mom, she cried when I answered, her voice raw with panic. Have you seen the news? Dad's being investigated for fraud. They're saying he's been running some kind of investment scam for years. I'm seeing it now, I said, my mind racing. Are you okay? No, nothing is okay, she sobbed. Dad says it's all a misunderstanding, that he can explain everything, but the FBI took his computers, his files. They even came to our house looking for documents. Your house? I repeated, alarm spiking through me. Why would they search your house? They had a warrant, she said, her voice breaking. They said Dad listed our address as his business office on some documents. Mom, what's happening? First the other women, now this. I closed my eyes, the pieces falling into place, the separate accounts, the mysterious investments, Robert's urgent warnings. Jenny, listen to me carefully, I said. Don't sign anything. Don't move any money. Call Marcus Chen immediately and ask him to recommend a criminal defense attorney, just as a precaution. A criminal defense attorney, she echoed, her voice rising with panic. Mom, do you think Dad actually did something illegal? I don't know, I admitted, but we need to be prepared. After calming Jennifer, I called Marcus, who had already seen the news. This complicates things, he said grimly. If Robert's finances are tied up in legal proceedings, it could delay the divorce settlement significantly. Should I postpone my trip? I asked. No, he said after a moment. As long as you're available by phone or video call, some distance might be beneficial. This investigation is in its early stages, and it could get messy. Next, I called the Riverside Police Department and spoke with Detective Sarah Mercer, who confirmed Robert was a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. Mrs. Wilson, she said carefully, we may need to speak with you as well. As his spouse, you might have information relevant to our inquiry. Of course, I agreed. I can come to the station today. That would be helpful, she replied. And Mrs. Wilson, I understand this must be a shock. Please bring any financial documents you have access to. The interview at the police station lasted 3 grueling hours. I answered questions about Robert's work habits, his frequent trips, any unusual financial behaviors. I provided the documents I'd gathered for the divorce, including records of the accounts and transfers to Philadelphia and Boston. Were you aware that your husband maintained residences in those cities? Detective Mercer asked. I only discovered that recently, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I believed he was traveling for work. She made a note. And these women, Eleanor Moran and Catherine Winters, did they know about each other or about you? Eleanor knew about me eventually, but I said, how old we me? Robert told her our marriage was in name only. I don't know what Catherine knew. Detective Mercer leaned forward, her tone gentle but serious. Based on our preliminary investigation, it appears your husband may have been using his relationships with these women to facilitate his financial scheme. He established credibility in different cities using different identities, built networks of wealthy clients through their social connections, and moved money between accounts to create the appearance of investment returns. My stomach twisted. Are you saying he was using us, all of us, as part of a fraud? That's our working theory, she confirmed. We'll need to conduct further interviews. Would you be willing to connect us with Eleanor Moran? I provided Connor's contact information instead, explaining that Eleanor was likely still reeling from the revelations. By the time I left the station, night had fallen. Sophia was waiting outside, and I collapsed into her car, emotionally exhausted. They think Robert was running a Ponzi scheme, I told her as she drove, using his multiple identities and relationships to build investor networks. Sophia shook her head in disbelief. And you never suspected anything? How could I? I said, my voice heavy. I trusted him completely with our finances. He was a banker. It was his profession, his family business. Questioning his financial decisions would have been like someone questioning my teaching methods. Back at Sophia's, I found more missed calls from Jennifer and one from Connor. I called Connor first. Mrs. Wilson, he said, his voice tight. The FBI contacted me. They're saying Mr. Wilson was running some kind of investment fraud. I just spoke with the police, I confirmed. They think he was using his relationships with your aunt and Catherine Winters to build investor networks. That makes sense, Connor said grimly. He became very integrated in Aunt Eleanor's social circle, arts patrons, gallery donors, people with money to invest. And Catherine's firm in Boston manages wealth for high net worth individuals. Connor, I asked hesitantly, did you ever invest with Robert? His silence was answered, Thomas. Yes, he admitted finally, and I recommended him to friends, colleagues. He promised exceptional returns, and for years he delivered. The statements always looked legitimate. I closed my eyes, the ripple effects of Robert's deception spreading further than I'd imagined. I'm sorry, I said, the words feeling inadequate. It's not your fault, Connor replied. You were deceived too. After speaking with Jennifer briefly to assure her I was safe, I sat with Sophia, the brandy warming my hands as the weight of the day settled over me. Florence was no longer just an escape, it was a necessity, a chance to rebuild myself from the ashes of a life I no longer recognized. That night I lay restless in Sophia's guest room, the unfamiliar shadows on the ceiling mirroring the chaos in my mind. The man I had shared my life with for half a century, the one I had vowed to love and trust, was now an enigma. Robert, my husband, was not just unfaithful, he might be a criminal. The weight of that realization pressed against my chest, stealing my breath. Had our life together been a lie? I replayed our courtship in my mind, the way his laughter used to light up a room, the quiet evenings we spent dreaming of our future, the pride in his eyes when Jennifer was born. Were those moments real, or had I been blind to the truth all along? Decades of memories flickered through my thoughts like a worn film reel. Robert's insistence on managing our finances alone, his sharp irritation whenever I questioned our investments, the locked office in our home that I was never allowed to enter. Had I ignored the signs, or had I simply trusted too deeply, embracing the traditional roles we'd fallen into? Him as the provider, me as the homemaker. The questions gnawed at me, each one a fresh wound. My flight to Florence was 2 days away, a journey I'd planned as an escape, a chance to rediscover myself. Yet, with the investigation into Robert's actions unfolding, part of me wondered if I should stay. Jennifer needed me. The authorities might need my cooperation. Facing the fallout with my family felt like my duty. But another part of me, a voice growing louder with each passing hour, urged me to go. Leaving wasn't about running from the mess Robert had created. It was about running toward the woman I could still become. For years, I had lived in his shadow, shaping my life around his needs, his ambitions. Now I craved the chance to define myself on my own terms. The next morning brought a flood of new developments, each one more devastating than the last. Robert had been arrested overnight, charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and orchestrating a Ponzi scheme that had allegedly swindled investors out of over $30 million. His face was plastered across every news channel, the once respected banker now a disgraced figure in handcuffs, shuffling into the federal courthouse. The image was surreal, like watching a stranger play a role in a tragedy I hadn't scripted. Jennifer's call came shortly after, her voice trembling with panic. "They're saying Dad could get 20 years, Mom, 20 years. He'll be in his 90s if he ever gets out." Her words broke my heart, not just for her pain, but for the innocence she'd lost. I could picture her, my strong, capable daughter, unraveling under the weight of her father's betrayal. "Breathe, Jenny," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm despite the storm raging inside me. "This is just the start of the legal process. We don't know what's coming next." "He wants to see you," she added, her tone hesitant. "He's been calling me, begging me to convince you to visit him before you leave." The request hung in the air, heavy with expectation. Did I owe Robert that final conversation? After 50 years of marriage, despite the lies and betrayals, did I need that closure to move forward? "I'll think about it," I told her, my voice barely above a whisper. After we hung up, I retreated to Sophia's sunroom, where the morning light spilled through the windows, illuminating her wild, untamed garden. The flowers were nothing like the roses and impatiens I'd cultivated back home, their orderly beauty a reflection of the controlled life I'd led. Sophia's garden was chaotic, vibrant, alive in a way that felt foreign yet inspiring. As I gazed at the riot of colors, I realized there was beauty in their lack of restraint, in their refusal to be tamed. In that quiet moment, surrounded by nature's defiance, I made my choice. I would see Robert one last time before leaving for Florence, not for his sake, but for mine. I needed to close this chapter with intention, to walk away on my own terms. The county detention center was a cold, sterile place, its gray walls and buzzing fluorescent lights a stark contrast to the warmth of Sophia's home. I navigated security checks and metal detectors, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and determination. When I reached the visiting room, divided by thick glass partitions, Robert was led in. The sight of him in an orange jumpsuit, his once confident posture replaced by a defensive hunch, hit me like a punch. Just one night in custody had diminished him, stripping away the polished exterior he'd worn for decades. We each picked up a phone receiver, the silence between us stretching taut. "Maggie," he said at last, his voice crackling through the line. "Thank you for coming." "You look terrible," I blurted, the words escaping before I could censor them. His laugh was hollow, devoid of the charm that had once drawn me to him. "Prison will do that to you." "It's been one night, Robert," I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. He rubbed his face, the stubble on his cheeks catching the harsh light. "Why did you come?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. "I needed to see you," I said, studying him through the glass. "To understand." I looked for traces of the man I'd married, the father of our daughter, the partner who had shared my life for 50 years. But the man before me was a stranger. His familiar features warped by the weight of his choices. "Was any of it real?" I asked, my voice trembling with the question that had haunted me for weeks. His eyes met mine briefly before darting away. "Of course it was real. You and Jennifer, you're my family." "And Eleanor? Catherine?" I pressed, naming the women whose existence had shattered my world. "Were they your family too?" He sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. "It's not what you think, Maggie. It started as business. Eleanor's late husband had connections in the art world. Catherine's firm managed portfolios I needed access to. Over time, it became more." "And the financial fraud?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "Was that real too?" His face hardened, a flicker of the old Robert surfacing. "Those are allegations. Nothing's been proven." "Don't," I snapped, cutting him off. "Don't lie to me anymore. The FBI has evidence. Detective Mercer showed me documents with your signature. Multiple signatures, Robert, under different names." His shoulders slumped, the defiance draining out of him. It wasn't supposed to end like this. The market turned. Investments didn't perform. I borrowed from new investors to cover obligations to earlier ones, just until things improved. But then I needed more and more. His matter-of-fact description of the Ponzi scheme was chilling, as if he were discussing a minor miscalculation rather than a betrayal that had ruined lives. And the relationships with those women, I said, my voice low, were they just collateral damage? He flinched, the words striking a nerve. That's not fair. I cared for them. I cared for you. You can't care for someone while lying to them for decades, I said, the truth of it cutting through me as much as it did him. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Maggie, listen. There's money, accounts the authorities don't know about, offshore holdings. If you access them before they're frozen, we could salvage something for you, for Jennifer, for Tyler's college fund. I stared at him, disbelief warring with disgust. You want me to help you hide assets, to commit fraud myself? I want to protect our family, he insisted, his eyes pleading. Everything I did was to maintain our lifestyle, to secure our future. No, I said, my voice firm. Everything you did was for yourself, to feel powerful, to live out some twisted fantasy of being multiple men with multiple lives. His expression darkened, a flash of anger breaking through his desperation. You have no idea what pressures I've been under. My father's legacy, the expectations of running Wilson Financial, maintaining our place in the community. You've lived a sheltered life, Maggie. You've never had to make the hard choices. His words ignited at a fury I hadn't known I was capable of. A sheltered life, I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. I gave up my education, my career, my identity to support you. I raised our daughter alone while you were off traveling for business, or as I now know, visiting your other families. For 50 years, I've made our house a home, maintained your social connections, played the perfect banker's wife. Don't you dare tell me I've been sheltered from hard choices. For the first time, Robert seemed genuinely shaken. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it, at a loss for words. I'm going to Florence tomorrow, I said, my resolve solidifying with each word. When I return, I'll cooperate fully with the investigation. But I won't help you hide money, and I won't excuse what you've done. Maggie, please, he began, but I cut him off. I did love you, Robert. For 50 years, I loved the man I thought you were. That's the tragedy, not just your betrayal, but the waste of that love. I hung up the receiver, stood, and signaled to the guard that I was done. As I walked away, I didn't look back. The last thread tying me to Robert had been severed, and though the cut stung, it also set me free. Outside, the late spring air was a balm against the recycled chill of the detention center. Sophia was waiting in her car, a novel propped open on the steering wheel. She glanced up as I approached. How did it go? She asked as I buckled myself into the passenger seat. Exactly as I expected, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He's sorry he got caught, not sorry for what he did. Sophia squeezed my hand, a silent gesture of support, before starting the car. What now? Now we pick up Jennifer and go to lunch, I said. Then I finished packing for Florence. Jennifer was waiting at Riverside Cafe, our usual spot for heart-to-heart talks over the years. Her face was pale, her normally impeccable appearance frayed at the edges, hair slightly mussed, eyes red from crying. When she saw me, she stood and wrapped me in a fierce embrace. Mom, she whispered, her voice breaking, I don't know how to process any of this. Neither do I admitted, holding her tightly. But we'll figure it out together. Over salads we barely touched, Jennifer filled me in on her conversations with the authorities. They've interviewed me twice already, she said, her voice hollow. They asked about Dad's work habits, his travel schedule, whether I ever met Eleanor or Catherine. And had you? I asked gently. She fidgeted with her wedding ring, a nervous habit she'd picked up years ago. I met Eleanor once, years back. Dad introduced her as an old family friend visiting for an art exhibition. I had no reason to suspect anything more. Her eyes met mine, pleading, You have to believe me, Mom. I do, I said, reaching for her hand. Your father was a master at keeping his lives separate. We all believed what he wanted us to believe. They're saying some of Dad's clients could lose everything, she continued, her voice cracking. Retirement savings, college funds, medical accounts, all gone. How could he do that to people? I had no answer. The Robert I'd known or thought I'd known would never have hurt others so callously. But that Robert had never existed. The FBI interviewed Daniel yesterday, Jennifer added, mentioning her husband. Apparently, Dad listed him as a financial consultant on some documents, though Daniel swears he never worked for Wilson Financial. Alarm surged through me. Is Daniel under investigation? They say he's just a witness for now, she replied, but the worry in her eyes betrayed her uncertainty. Another ripple of Robert's deception, threatening to pull our son-in-law into its undertow. How far would the damage spread? And Tyler? I asked, thinking of my teenage grandson. How's he holding up? Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. He's angry, confused. Kids at school are talking about Grandpa's arrest. Someone spray-painted thief on our garage door last night. My heart ached for her, for Tyler, for the innocence they'd both lost. I'm so sorry, Jenny. I wish I could fix this. It's not your fault, she said, squeezing my hand. But Mom, do you really have to leave tomorrow with everything happening? I do, I said firmly. I need space to think, to breathe, and you need to focus on Tyler, on protecting your family from the fallout of your father's actions. I'll be reachable by phone and email. Marcus has all my contact details for Florence. She nodded reluctantly. I understand. I just hate the thought of you being alone through this. I've been alone for years, I said softly. I just didn't know it. Maybe being physically alone will feel more honest. After lunch, Jennifer drove me back to Sophia's to finish packing. As we pulled into the driveway, she turned to me, her expression resolute. Mom, I want you to have this, she said, pulling an envelope from her purse. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000. Jenny, I can't take this, I protested. You need to protect your finances, especially now. It's not from our regular accounts, she explained. When Tyler was born, I opened a separate savings account in my name only. I've been adding to it every month, my own safety net. After seeing what's happened with Dad, I'm glad I did. The parallels to my own secret account struck me. Like mother, like daughter, both of us quietly building safeguards against the uncertainties of our marriages. This money is clean, Jennifer continued. No ties to Dad or Wilson Financial. Please take it, to stay longer in Florence, to travel, to make up for the opportunities you missed because of us. Tears pricked my eyes. Because of us? Jenny, you were the greatest opportunity of my life. I've never regretted being your mother. Not for a moment. But you regretted giving up your dreams, she said softly. The teaching job abroad, the travels you never took. I made choices, I corrected her. Some with less information than others, but they were mine. In the end, I accepted the check, recognizing it as more than financial support. It was Jennifer's way of granting me permission to put myself first. The rest of the day was a blur of final preparations. I confirmed arrangements with Marcus, my lawyer, for my legal representation while I was away. Sophia helped me organize my medications and photocopy my travel documents. By evening, my suitcases stood ready by the door, my carry-on packed with essentials for the long flight. That night, sleep eluded me. My mind churned through the past weeks. The phone bill that had unraveled everything, the confrontation with Robert, the revelations of his double lives and financial crimes. It felt like a lifetime's worth of pain compressed into days. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and padded to Sophia's kitchen to make tea. To my surprise, she was already there, reading at the table. Couldn't sleep? She asked, setting her book aside. Too much on my mind, I admitted. What's your excuse? Old age, she said with a wry smile. Sleep and I have been casual acquaintances for years. She poured me a cup of tea from the pot she'd brewed, and we sat in comfortable silence, the only sounds the occasional rustle of a page or the clink of a cup. I keep thinking about choices, I said at last. All the moments that led me here, marrying Robert, giving up Florence, building our life in Riverside, were they all wrong? Sophia considered this, her expression thoughtful. I don't think choices are right or wrong when we make them. They're just what we choose based on what we know and feel at the time. But if I'd chosen differently, I said, if I'd gone to Florence 50 years ago instead of marrying Robert, you wouldn't have Jennifer, she pointed out gently, or Tyler. you wouldn't have had the teaching career that touched so many lives. Different choices would have led to a different life, not necessarily a better one. Her words struck a deep chord, easing a knot of regret I hadn't realized I was carrying. My life hadn't been a mistake. It had been the result of the choices I'd made with the information I'd had. What matters now, Sophia added, is what you choose to do with the information you have today. I choose Florence, I said, the words feeling like a vow. I choose to see what else life might hold for me beyond being Robert's wife. At dawn, Jennifer arrived to drive me to the airport, with Tyler in tow despite the early hour. "Grandma," he said, hugging me tightly on the sidewalk outside departures, "I made you something this." He handed me a delicate paper crane, its folds precise and careful. "It's good for luck on your Kenji journey taught my friend me how to make them." I tucked it carefully into my purse. "I'll keep it always," I promised. "And I found this online," he continued, showing me a translation app on his phone. "You can download it, and it'll help with Italian. It even works offline." His thoughtfulness brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Thank you, Tyler. That's so incredibly thoughtful." "Just come back, okay?" he said, his voice cracking, making him seem younger than his 16 years. "Everything's changing so fast, and I don't scared want to lose you too." "You won't lose me," I assured him, cupping his face. "I'm finding just a finding, different a version new of me version. I'll be of back myself before you know it." The goodbyes were tearful but not crushing, as Jennifer and Tyler both seemed to grasp that this journey was essential for me, even if the timing was messy complicated. "Call us when you land," Jennifer reminded me as I headed towards security. "Every day," I promised, my voice steady with conviction. "Take care of each other." The flight to Florence was long, nearly 10 hours with a layover in Paris. I spent the time reading an Italian phrase book, napping fitfully, and staring out at the clouds, marveling at how quickly physical distance could be crossed when emotional distance took years to bridge. As the plane began its descent into Florence, my heart raced with anticipation. The landscape was unlike anything in Connecticut. Terracotta rooftops, cypress trees, the Arno River weaving through the city like a ribbon of history. When the wheels touched down, I realized I was smiling, a real, genuine smile that felt unfamiliar after weeks of strain. The Florence airport was smaller than I'd expected, manageable even with my rudimentary Italian. I collected my luggage, my heart lighter with each step, ready to embrace whatever this new chapter would bring. Margaret Wilson stepped into a taxi in Florence, her heart a tangle of nerves and hope, clutching a slip of paper with her new address. The city thrummed with life. Scooters zipped past ancient buildings, and voices wove through the air. The driver, curious, asked, "Emiliana?" She nodded, offering a hesitant, "See," a word she'd rehearsed until it felt like a lifeline. "Vacanza?" he probed. She faltered. Vacation didn't capture the weight of her journey. "Nuovo inizio," she said, a new beginning, the phrase trembling with possibility. He grinned, "Bene," and the taxi wove through Florence's maze. The streets were a dance of old and new, stone facades beside sleek shops. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but freedom. They stopped at a pale yellow building by the Arno, its balcony spilling geraniums. Gabriella, her landlady, waited, mid-50s, silver-streaked, warm. "Signora Wilson," she called, her smile a beacon. Up 3 flights, she revealed a charming apartment, high ceilings, windows framing the street, simple elegance, a kitchen nook, a bedroom with crisp linens. "Perfetto," Margaret breathed, and Gabriella glowed. "How long?" Gabriella asked. "1 month, maybe more," Margaret replied, her future unmoored. "Firenze is for thinking," Gabriella said knowingly, "for finding." She explained the stove, blankets, recycling, then handed over the keys. "Your home." Alone, Margaret felt possibility flood her. At 70, she was Maggie, unmoored from her roles as Robert's wife or a mother's daughter, ready for a new self. Reality hit. Robert's betrayal, his arrest, the legal storm, crashed over her. She sank onto the sofa, letting grief, anger, fear, and a flicker of joy rage for 10 minutes. Then she unpacked, made the bed, and bought market essentials: coffee, bread, cheese, peaches. She connected Wi-Fi, messaged family, and sat on her balcony with wine. Florence's sounds, Italian chatter, scooters, music, wrapping her in comforting strangeness. Dinner at a trattoria was a small triumph. With gestures, she ordered pasta, simple yet divine, and paid herself, calculating tips in euros, a task Robert always owned, and it felt like defiance. Preparing for bed, she mused on her younger self. Would 22-year-old Maggie have savored this, or rushed past it? She slept deeply, waking to sunlight and Florence's hum, expecting Robert's presence, then feeling free. Breakfast on the balcony, she set out to explore, map and phone in hand. Locals bustled, shops opened, goods flowed. A piazza with a fountain hosted chess and chatter. A market bloomed with color, and she wandered, lost then found, uncovering a chapel's frescoes, a craftsman's workshop, a towering bookstore. Near Ponte Vecchio, she found an art school and, impulsively, signed up for watercolor, a rebellion against Robert's practicality. Jennifer called, marveling at Florence. Watercolor? She laughed, then grew grim. Robert's fraud spanned 15 years, the FBI closing in. I'm glad you're away, she said, hiding from press. They skirted Robert's shadow, parting with love. Gabriella invited Margaret for coffee, warming her. She researched volunteering, finding an English teaching program, rekindling her teacher's soul. A reply invited her to visit, sparking purpose. Marcus called, Robert's crimes deepened. Cayman accounts, identity fraud, tax evasion. Messy, he warned, but Margaret was a witness, not complicit. Robert's lawyer pushed to surrender the house for divorce concessions. She laughed bitterly. His assets were gone. I need time, she said, tasting freedom. The Riverside house felt empty now. Sunset painted Florence gold. For 50 years, she'd been Robert's wife, her life his frame. Now she wondered, who was she? What did she want? Curiosity stirred her. The next 2 weeks flew. Watercolor class anchored her clumsy strokes growing under Paolo's praise. Your eye for beauty is a gift. Volunteering with teens, she was teacher Margaret, their energy infectious. Lucia's question, you're never too old to find yourself, echoed. An email from Connor revealed Catherine, Robert's mistress, arrested as his co-conspirator, claiming she was betrayed. Margaret read torn, vindicated, yet doubting her own blindness. Had she missed signs too? The question lingered, a shadow in Florence's light, her new chapter unfolding with questions. The phone buzzed insistently, pulling me from the quiet of my Florence apartment. Jennifer's name flashed on the screen, signaling our daily check-in, a ritual that had become both a lifeline and a reminder of the chaos I'd left behind. I answered, bracing myself for whatever fresh turmoil she might bring. Have you seen the news? Her voice crackled with urgency, diving straight into the storm surrounding Catherine Winters. The name alone sent a shiver through me, a reminder of the tangled web my husband had spun. Yes, I replied, my tone heavy with the weight of it all. Connor sent me the article. My son's text had arrived that morning, a stark headline about Catherine's alleged involvement in Robert's schemes. But Jennifer's next words hit harder, her voice taut with strain. That's not all. The FBI raided Aunt Eleanor's gallery in Philadelphia this morning. They're saying she was laundering money through art deals, buying and selling to cover Robert's tracks. The revelation landed like a stone in my chest. Eleanor too? I'd clung to the belief that she was just another of Robert's victims, a woman deceived like me. But this suggested something darker, a deliberate role in his crimes. My mind reeled, trying to reconcile the Eleanor I'd known, the one who'd sent thoughtful Christmas cards, with this new image of a co-conspirator. Apparently she's known about the fraud for at least 5 years, Jennifer continued, her words clipped, as if she were holding back a flood of emotion. She helped hide it. 5 years, the timeline gnawed at me, each year a betrayal I hadn't seen. Jennifer paused, and I could hear the strain in her silence. Mom, they interviewed me again yesterday. They wanted to know if Dad ever involved me in his investments. My heart lurched, a spike of fear cutting through the fog of Florence's evening light. What did you tell them? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. The truth, she said, steady but weary. that he sometimes asked me to deliver documents to clients or banks when I was traveling for work. I never knew what was in them. They seemed okay with that. But her voice faltered, trailing into a heavy silence. "But what, Jenny?" I pressed, dread pooling in my stomach. She sighed, a sound so laden with exhaustion it seemed to carry the weight of our fractured family. "They're looking at everyone tied to Dad, especially us. Daniel's under a microscope because of those accounts in his name. My reputation's taking a hit. Clients are pulling away from the firm, scared of the Wilson name." Her words were a quiet cry for help, and my heart ached for her, for the daughter who'd built a life of integrity now tainted by her father's sins. I wanted to reach through the phone to shield her from the fallout. "I'm so sorry, honey," I said, my voice thick with guilt. "Do you need me to come home?" "No," she replied firmly, though I could sense the effort it took. "There's nothing you can do here except get pulled deeper into this mess. Stay in Florence. At least one of us should have some peace." Peace, the word felt almost absurd in the context of my life, yet I understood her meaning. In Florence, I was insulated from the relentless media scrutiny, the daily barrage of revelations about Robert's deceptions. Here, I could breathe, even if each breath carried the weight of betrayal. "How's Tyler holding up?" I asked, shifting to my grandson, hoping for a glimmer of light in this darkness. "Better than I expected," Jennifer said, a faint warmth creeping into her voice. "He's furious at Grandpa, of course, but he's pouring it into a school project on financial ethics. His teacher says it's remarkable." I smiled, a flicker of pride cutting through my turmoil. Tyler at 16 was channeling his anger into something constructive, a resilience that felt like a small victory against the chaos Robert had left behind. "He's a remarkable young man," I said, my voice soft with affection. After we hung up, I stepped onto my balcony, the Florence evening settling over the city like a velvet curtain. The Arno glimmered faintly below, and the terracotta rooftops glowed in the fading light. But my mind was far from the beauty before me, tangled in the latest wave of truths. Eleanor, whom I'd pitied as another of Robert's casualties, might have been complicit. Catherine, with her financial acumen, claimed innocence, yet the evidence suggested otherwise. And Jennifer and Tyler, my daughter and grandson, were left to bear the consequences of choices they hadn't made, their lives upended by a man they'd trusted. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Gabriella, my neighbor, holding a bottle of Chianti and 2 glasses, her warm smile a beacon in my storm. "Buonasera," she said, her Italian accent wrapping the word in comfort. "I thought you might like some company tonight." I hesitated, then invited her in, grateful for the distraction. Over the past 2 weeks, Gabriella had become a quiet ally, guiding me through Florence's hidden corners and offering gentle wisdom when I stumbled over cultural nuances. As she poured the wine, her eyes caught the shadow on my face. "You look troubled," she observed, settling into a chair across from me on the balcony. "Bad news from home?" I nodded, not ready to share the full weight of it, but comforted by her quiet perception. "Family complications," I said simply, the words barely scratching the surface of the truth. Gabriella sipped her wine, her gaze thoughtful. "Family is always complicated. My sister and I, we didn't speak for 15 years over a misunderstanding about our mother's necklace." Her voice carried the weight of that lost time, yet there was a lightness too, as if she'd made peace with it. 15 years? I echoed, surprised. "That's a long time to hold a grudge." She shrugged, a small smile playing on her lips. "Italians, we are passionate, but now we talk every day. Time has a way of showing what matters and what doesn't." Her words, simple yet profound, struck a chord. I thought of the years I'd spent building a life with Robert, believing in a love that was, in part, a lie. What mattered now? What could I salvage from the wreckage? "How did you reconcile?" I asked, curious about the path she'd taken. Her expression softened, her eyes distant with memory. "Her husband died suddenly. I went to the funeral. She cried, I cried, and the necklace seemed so small in the face of that loss." She took another sip of wine, then met my gaze. "Sometimes life must shake us to show us what is truly important." Her words landed like a truth I'd been avoiding. Life had shaken me, violently and without warning, shattering the foundation of my marriage, my family, my sense of self. I was married for 50 years, I found myself saying, the confession spilling out unbidden. I thought I knew my husband completely. I was wrong. Gabriella's eyes softened with empathy. Ah, this is why you come to Florence alone. It was Mbusi Nakotoni, Binu Haunazuki, Gongan Wep Metimo Waemei Bin Wazemashita. Ah, Korga Anataga Hitori de Florence ni Akita Liu desu ne. Yes, I admitted, the word heavy with the weight of my unraveling life. I needed distance to think clearly. And are you thinking clearly? Her question was gentle but piercing, forcing me to confront the uncertainty it had been carrying. Was I finding clarity in Florence's beauty? Or was I merely hiding from the hard choices awaiting me back home? I'm trying, I said finally, my voice tinged with honesty. Some days are clearer than others. Gabriella reached across the table, her hand warm against mine. When my husband left me for his secretary, so cliché, no, I was lost. 27 years together, gone like smoke. I thought my life was over. Her vulnerability surprised me, drawing me closer to her story. What did you do? I asked, hungry for the wisdom of someone who'd walked through her own fire. First I cried. Many days, many tears, she said with a wry smile. Then I bought this building with my divorce settlement, Noasin. Now I have apartments to rent, my own income, and no man to tell me how to manage it. It wasn't the life I planned, but it's a good life. Her story stirred something in me, a spark of recognition that beyond the pain of betrayal lay the possibility of reinvention. I thought of the house in Connecticut, the one I'd called home for decades. I haven't decided what to do about my house, I confessed. My lawyer says Robert's attorney wants me to give up my claim to it. And do you want it still? Gabriella's question was direct, cutting through my indecision. I paused, the question forcing me to confront my attachment to the house. I don't know, it holds 50 years of memories, raising Jennifer, holidays, gardening, but it's also a reminder of a life built on lies. The words felt like a confession, raw and unfiltered. Gabriella nodded, her expression thoughtful. Houses are just walls and a roof. Home is the feeling you carry inside. She gestured to the city beyond the balcony. For me, this apartment in Florence became more home in 5 years than the house with my husband was in 27. Her perspective sliced through the emotional knot I'd been tangled in. Was I holding on to the Riverside house out of love for the life it represented, or out of fear of letting go? Thank you, I said sincerely. You've given me something to think about. After Gabriella left, I sat with her words, my mind churning. I pulled out my phone and drafted an email to Marcus, my lawyer, the decision crystallizing with unexpected clarity. After careful consideration, I'm willing to relinquish my claim to the Riverside house, provided I receive a fair monetary settlement reflecting my half of the property's value, minus any legal encumbrances from Robert's case. I also want to arrange to collect my personal belongings, family photographs, my mother's china, my teaching awards, and other sentimental items. Please draft the necessary documents and advise me on the next steps. I hit send before doubt could creep in, a strange lightness settling over me. The house had been my anchor, the heart of my identity as a wife and mother. Letting it go felt like both a loss and a liberation, a step toward a life I could shape on my own terms. My phone rang almost immediately. Marcus. I just read your email, he said, cutting to the chase. Are you absolutely certain about the house? Once we move forward, it'll be hard to backtrack. I'm certain, I replied, surprised by the conviction in my voice. The house belongs to a life I'm no longer living. Understood. I'll prepare the paperwork and contact Robert's counsel. He paused, his tone shifting. There's something else. The prosecution wants to discuss your potential testimony. My pulse quickened, the thought of testifying against Robert twisting my stomach. Testimony against him? I asked, though I knew the answer. Yes, they believe your perspective as his wife of 50 years could be compelling. You wouldn't need to address financial details, just his character, his behavior, anything that might reveal his intent. The image of standing in a courtroom, laying bare the wreckage of our marriage while Robert watched, made my chest tighten. Do I have to decide now? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. No, not yet, but they'll want to interview you eventually, whether or not you testify at trial. Marcus's voice was steady, professional. They've asked if you'd do a video conference next week since you're in Italy. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Tell them I'll do the interview. I'll need time to think about testifying. Of course, I'll be with you during the call to protect your interests. His tone softened. How are you doing over there, First Mrs. Wilson? Really? The question caught me off guard, his warmth breaking through his usual professional reserve. I'm finding my way, I said honestly. Florence is helping me see things more clearly. Good. You deserve that clarity after everything. He hesitated. If I may, you sound different, stronger, more decisive. His words startled me, but as I reflected, I realized he was right. The woman who'd sat in his office weeks ago, shattered by Robert's betrayal, was not the same woman sitting here now. Thank you, I said. I think I'm remembering the strength I'd forgotten I had. After we hung up, I opened my sketchbook, capturing the view from my balcony. The street below, the buildings across the way, the soft glow of evening light on terracotta tiles. The scene had become a constant in my shifting world, a quiet anchor. As I sketched, my mind drifted to the upcoming interview with the prosecutors. What would I say about Robert? About the man I thought I knew versus the man he'd revealed himself to be. The next morning, I woke early and walked to my favorite cafe near the Duomo. Marco, the owner, greeted me with a cheerful, "Buongiorno, Signora Margaret," my cappuccino and cornetto ready before I could order. "Bellissimo day," he said, and I agreed, the Italian word feeling natural on my tongue. As I sat by the window watching Florence awaken, my phone buzzed with an email from Eleanor Moran. My breath caught. I'd spoken to Eleanor only once before, a tense meeting in a cafe between Riverside and Philadelphia. Now, with her gallery raided and her role in Robert's crimes exposed, what could she want? Her message was brief but urgent. "Maggie, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need to speak with you. There are things about Robert you should know, things that may affect you legally and financially. I'm reaching out because, despite everything, I believe we're both victims, though in different ways. I understand you're in Florence. I can arrange a video call at your convenience. Eleanor." I stared at the screen, torn. My instinct was to delete the message, to shut out the woman who'd been involved with my husband for 23 years and possibly aided his crimes. Her audacity was staggering, yet her words, "things about Robert you should know, things that may affect you legally and financially," gave me pause. If she had information that could protect me, wouldn't ignoring it be reckless? I finished my breakfast, weighing my options. By the time I paid Marco and began walking back to my apartment, I decided to hear her out, but with Marcus present to safeguard my interests. I replied, "Eleanor, I'm willing to speak with you, but only with my attorney present. He can set up a secure video call. Please contact Marcus Chen at the email below to arrange a time. Maggie." Within an hour, Marcus called. "Mrs. Wilson, I just heard from Eleanor Moran's attorney. She's eager to speak with you." "What about?" I asked, my voice steady despite the unease creeping in. "Only that it concerns information relevant to your financial interests in the divorce and the broader investigation," he said cautiously. "I've set up a video call for tomorrow morning my time, early afternoon for you. I recommend taking it from my office virtually, not your personal device." "Of course," I agreed. "Do you think she's trying to help, or is this a trap?" "Hard to say. Her legal situation is shaky. She might be angling for a deal with prosecutors or trying to align her story with yours. Or she could genuinely have information you need. We'll proceed carefully." The day passed with a quiet tension. I attended my watercolor class, but my brushstrokes were distracted, my mind elsewhere. Paolo, my instructor, noticed. "Your thoughts are not here today," he said, eyeing my half-finished painting of the Ponte Vecchio. "The bridge will wait. Perhaps today is for walking, not painting." I took his advice, packing up early and wandering through Florence's quieter streets. The movement grounded me, and by evening, I felt steadier. That night, I dreamed of Robert, not the man who'd betrayed me, but the young, earnest man I'd married, walking with me along the Arno, promising a future together. I woke with tears on my cheeks, grieving not just the marriage I'd lost, but the one I'd believed in for so long. The video call with Eleanor was set for 2 p.m. Florence time. I arranged my laptop in the apartment, choosing a plain wall as a backdrop to keep the setting neutral. At exactly 2:00, Marcus initiated the call, his face appearing first, calm and professional from his Connecticut office. Then Eleanor joined, and I was struck by her appearance, her usual elegance dulled by fatigue, dark circles framing her eyes. "Mrs. Wilson, Miss Moran," Marcus began formally, "I'm recording this for record keeping. With your permission, this is not a deposition or official statement." We agreed, and a tense silence followed. Eleanor spoke first. "Thank you for agreeing to this, Maggie. I know it's unconventional, to say the least." Her voice was strained, carrying the weight of her own unraveling life. "What information do you have?" I asked, my tone direct, no patience for pleasantries. She looked down, then back at the camera. "First, I've accepted a plea deal. I'll plead guilty to reduce charges in exchange for testifying against Robert. That's not why I'm here, but I wanted you to hear it from me." I nodded, unsurprised. "And the reason for this call?" "It's about Geneva," she said. The name meant nothing. "Geneva? The city in Switzerland?" I asked, confused. Her expression flickered with surprise. "No, Geneva Harris, Robert's third wife." The world seemed to tilt. "Third wife?" I said, my voice trembling. "What are you talking about?" Eleanor and Marcus exchanged a glance. "You don't know about Geneva?" she asked carefully. "I know about you in Philadelphia and Catherine in Boston," I said, struggling to keep my composure. "Are you saying there's another?" Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing herself. "Not just another woman, a legal wife. Robert and Geneva Harris were married in Las Vegas 15 years ago. She lives in Chicago." "That's impossible," I protested, my mind racing. "He couldn't legally marry anyone else while married to me." "He used a different identity," Eleanor explained. "Robert Morgan, the same name he used with Catherine. He built that identity decades ago. Social security number, credit history, employment records." Marcus leaned forward, his lawyer's mind sharp. "Are you certain? Do you have documentation?" "The FBI has it," Eleanor confirmed. "Marriage certificate, joint property deeds, tax returns filed as husband and wife. Geneva has a daughter with Robert, Olivia, 13 years old." A daughter. The word struck like a physical blow. Robert had another child, a girl I'd never known existed, born when he was nearly 60. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why tell me this now?" "Because Geneva doesn't know about the rest of us," Eleanor said, her voice heavy with the weight of the truth she'd just unleashed. My heart pounded, the revelation tearing open wounds I'd thought were beginning to heal. Another wife, another child, another life Robert had hidden. As I sat there, the Florence sunlight streaming through the window, I felt the ground shift beneath me once more, forcing me to confront yet another layer of the man I'd loved, and the life I'd never truly known. The revelation of Robert's multifaceted deception had left me reeling, my heart a tangled knot of betrayal, anger, and sorrow. As I sat across from my laptop, the screen glowing with Eleanor's voice during our video call, her words pierced through the haze of my emotions. She spoke with a measured intensity, her eyes sharp yet shadowed with the weight of her own disillusionment. "The FBI is set to interview Geneva tomorrow," she said, her voice steady, but laced with a bitterness I recognized all too well. "They're moving deliberately, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, building their case like architects of justice. But Geneva hesitated, Maggie. She didn't act fast enough, and Robert's assets, joint accounts with her, untouched by freezes, are still out there. Those assets could be part of your divorce settlement, rightfully yours." Marcus, my attorney, sat beside me, his pen scratching furiously across his notepad, his brow furrowed as he leaned forward, his analytical mind already dissecting the information. "What kind of assets are we talking about?" he asked, his tone clipped, professional. "Where are they held?" Eleanor didn't hesitate. "Investment accounts primarily. There's also a lakefront property in Michigan, a retreat Robert probably spun as a private haven. And then there's art, collectibles, stored in a Chicago facility. Valuable pieces, no doubt curated to impress." Her gaze shifted to me, piercing through the digital divide. "Maggie, I know trust doesn't come easily after all this, and I don't blame you. But when the FBI tore through my gallery, questioning every choice I'd made, every piece I'd acquired, I saw it clearly. My integrity, my judgment, my entire life. It was all under siege because of Robert. We were all pawns, you, me, Catherine, Geneva. He played us like a master puppeteer, keeping us in separate corners of his world, oblivious to one another. Her words struck a deep chord, resonating with the painful truth I'd been grappling with. Robert had been a chameleon, crafting distinct lives for each of us, doling out just enough affection, just enough presence, to sustain the illusion of devotion. I thought of the 50 years I'd spent with him, how he'd subtly shaped our existence, our finances, our social circles, even my personal choices, into a mold that suited him. Had it been intentional, a calculated strategy to keep me pliant, predictable, contained? The thought sent a shiver through me, a mix of fury and grief for the woman I'd been, trusting and unaware. "How did you find out about Geneva?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended, betraying the storm within. Eleanor's expression hardened, her lips pressing into a thin line. "During my interviews with the FBI, they laid it all out: photographs, financial records, questions about whether I'd ever met her or known of her existence. I hadn't, not a clue. That's when it hit me, the full scope of Robert's lies. It wasn't just about money, Maggie. It was about power. The power to weave multiple realities, to control the narrative of each of our lives without us ever suspecting the others." Her voice trembled slightly, not with weakness, but with the raw anger of someone who'd been stripped of illusions. I sat back, my mind spinning. 50 years, half a century of shared moments, of building a life I thought was ours alone, only to discover it was one of many. Had I ever truly known Robert? Or had I loved a carefully curated persona, tailored to keep me tethered to his script? Marcus broke the silence, his voice cutting through my spiraling thoughts. "Ms. Moran, what exactly are you suggesting Mrs. Wilson do with this information?" Eleanor's response was swift, resolute. "Contact Geneva before the FBI does, not to interfere with their investigation or to warn her in some shady way, but to forge a connection. The prosecutors are methodical, but they're human. Right now they see 4 separate households, 4 distinct frauds. If you and Geneva stand together as deceived wives, it strengthens your claim to the assets. It paints you as victims, not accomplices." Marcus's skepticism was palpable, his eyes narrowing slightly. "That's a bold legal strategy, Ms. Moran. It would require careful coordination, possibly between separate legal teams. There are risks involved." "I know," Eleanor acknowledged, her tone softening but not wavering. "My attorneys have been clear about that, but the more we position ourselves as victims of Robert's scheme, the better our chances of salvaging some financial security from this wreckage." She went on, providing details about Geneva, a pediatric surgeon living in Chicago with a daughter named Olivia who attended a private school. Each fact landed like a stone, adding weight to the already crushing reality. By the time we ended the call, my head was a whirlpool of new betrayals, new complications, new questions about the man I thought I knew. "What do you think?" I asked Marcus, once Eleanor's face vanished from the screen. He leaned back, his expression thoughtful, his fingers tapping lightly against his notepad. "Her information about Geneva Harris seems credible, but we'll need to verify it independently," he said. "Her suggestion about contacting Geneva has strategic potential, but it's not without pitfalls. If mishandled, Geneva might see it as manipulative or threatening." "And do you think I should do it? Reach out to her?" My voice trembled, uncertainty gnawing at me. Marcus paused, choosing his words with care. "From a legal standpoint, establishing communication could bolster your position in asset recovery. It might align your interests with Geneva's, especially regarding unfrozen accounts. But personally?" He hesitated, his eyes meeting mine with a rare softness. "That's your call, Mrs. Wilson. This is already an emotionally tangled situation." After we hung up, I remained at my laptop, motionless, as if moving might shatter the fragile calm I was clinging to. Another wife, another daughter, another home. How many lives had Robert constructed, each a meticulously maintained facade? How many versions of himself had he performed, each tailored to a different audience. Was there even a real Robert Wilson anymore? Or just a collection of masks, each discarded when the curtain fell? I stepped onto my balcony, the Florence afternoon unfolding below, shopkeepers bantering with customers, tourists puzzling over maps, locals striding purposefully to their destinations. Life pulsed on, indifferent to the upheaval tearing through my heart. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Everything okay? You usually check in by now." My thumb hovered over the screen. Should I tell her about Geneva? About Olivia, her 13-year-old half-sister? The truth would devastate her, force her to reframe her father yet again, to mourn a man who'd never truly existed. "All fine," I texted back. "Had a meeting with Marcus. We'll call later with an update." I needed time to process this myself before burdening her with more pain. The decision to contact Geneva crystallized with startling clarity as I stood there, the Tuscan breeze brushing against my skin. If our roles were reversed, wouldn't I want to know what was coming? Wouldn't I crave the perspective of someone who understood the betrayal about to upend my world? I drafted an email to the address Eleanor had provided. "Dr. Harris, my name is Margaret Wilson. This will come as a shock, but I believe we share a husband, Robert Wilson, who you may know as Robert Morgan. I recently learned of his multiple lives and identities, including his marriage to you. The FBI will contact you tomorrow regarding his arrest and an ongoing investigation into financial fraud. I know this is overwhelming, coming from a stranger, but I felt you deserved a heads up before your life changes irrevocably. If you'd like to talk, my number is below. If not, I completely understand. Sincerely, Margaret Wilson." I read it twice, my heart pounding, then hit send before doubt could stop me. Then I called Jennifer, steeling myself for one of the hardest conversations of my life. Her voice, when she answered, was already heavy with worry. "Mom, what's going on?" I took a deep breath and began, each word a step into the unknown. "Geneva called at 6 next morning, her voice slicing through the fog of my sleepless night. I'd lain awake rehearsing what I might say to this woman who, like me, had built a life on the quicksand of Robert's lies. "Is this Margaret Wilson?" Her tone was controlled, professional, the kind honed by years of delivering life-altering news to patients' families. "Yes, this is Maggie," I replied, sitting up in bed and flicking on the lamp, its soft glow a small anchor in the darkness. "Thank you for calling, Dr. Harris. Please call me Geneva." A pause, heavy with unspoken questions. "I got your email last night. At first I thought it was a mistake, some cruel scam. Then I started searching online and found the articles about Robert's arrest." Her voice wavered, just for a moment. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it, the weight of her shock mirroring my own from weeks ago. She let out a short, brittle laugh. "Shocking doesn't even begin to cover it. I'm a pediatric surgeon. I handle crises daily, sick children, frantic parents, split-second decisions. But this, finding out my husband of 15 years has other wives, plural, it's beyond anything I could have imagined." "I know," I said softly. I felt the same when I learned the truth. I told her about the phone bill that had unraveled everything, the confrontation with Robert, the slow peeling back of his elaborate deception. When I finished, she murmured, 50 years. You were married to him for 50 years and he still did this to you. I don't have words." "How much do you know about the charges?" I asked, bracing myself. "Just what I found online last night. Financial fraud, a Ponzi scheme, multiple identities. The articles mentioned you and someone named Eleanor Moran, but not me or Catherine Winters." Her voice caught, a crack in her composure. "How many of us are there, Maggie?" "As far as I know, 4, I said. "But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if there are more we haven't uncovered." Silence stretched between us, thick with shared grief. When Geneva spoke again, her tone was steadier, resolute. "The FBI will be here at 9. What should I expect?" I shared what I'd learned from my own interviews, the probing questions, the document requests, the looming threat of asset seizures. My attorney suggested we might benefit from coordinating our approaches to asset recovery. I added, tentative. "That makes sense," Geneva said. "I'll need to find a lawyer who specializes in whatever this is, if such a specialty exists. Another pause. What about your daughter? How's she handling this? It's been brutal for Jennifer, I admitted. Robert was her hero. Learning about his quadruple life has shaken her to her core. And Olivia, Geneva said, her voice softening to a near whisper, my daughter doesn't know yet. She adores her father. This will break her. The mention of Olivia, Jennifer's half-sister, sent a fresh wave of sadness through me. She's 13, Geneva continued, her professional facade cracking further. Just starting to navigate adolescence, and now this. How do I tell her? How do I explain that her father's been living a lie our entire family life? I thought of Jennifer's struggle to explain Robert's betrayal to her son Tyler. There's no perfect way, I said gently. But with my grandson, I found honesty, tailored to his age, works best. Kids sense when you're hiding something. They're resilient, but they need truth. Geneva took a deep breath. You're right. I'll have to tell her soon before she hears it elsewhere. She hesitated. Would you be willing to talk again after the FBI interview? To compare notes? Of course, Wes, I said without hesitation. Call any time. After we hung up, I lay back, the early morning light filtering through my Florence apartment. The conversation had been surreal. Two strangers bound by a shared betrayal, navigating a landscape neither of us had chosen. What kind of man could sustain 4 families, 4 identities for decades? The logistics alone were mind-boggling, but the emotional detachment required to lie so effortlessly, to manipulate so completely, was what haunted me most. Had Robert ever felt guilt? Or had he reveled in the power, the thrill of orchestrating lives while we remained blissfully unaware? Those questions, once all-consuming, were beginning to fade. Robert's motivations no longer held the same grip on me. What mattered now was my path forward, the steps I'd take to reclaim my life. I rose, made a simple breakfast, and carried it to the balcony, the routine grounding me amidst the chaos. Later, I walked to the Bulbuli Gardens, sketchbook in hand, seeking solace in the rhythm of pencil on paper. But my concentration faltered, my mind crowded with images. Geneva facing FBI agents, Olivia learning her father's truth, Jennifer grappling with a half-sister, Robert in a detention center as his world collapsed. I abandoned my sketching and walked, letting Florence's beauty envelop me. The ancient architecture, the artistry in every cobblestone, the city's timeless pulse. Near the Uffizi Gallery, a small jewelry shop caught my eye, its window displaying handcrafted pieces. A silver pendant shaped like a door key, engraved with Libertà, stopped me in my tracks. Freedom. On impulse, I entered. The elderly craftsman, his English halting but warm, explained that the pendant was inspired by an old door in the Oltrarno district, once part of a family home, now an art studio. A new beginning, he said, smiling. It's beautiful, I told him. I'll take it. Is it a gift? He asked as he wrapped it. No, I said, a quiet resolve settling within me. It's for me, a reminder. Back at my apartment, I fastened the necklace, the cool metal against my skin, a tangible symbol of transformation, a key to a door that no longer existed, repurposed into something new. It felt right, a marker of this new chapter. That evening, Geneva called again, her voice heavy with exhaustion. The FBI just left. 5 hours of questions, document reviews, legal implications. They were professional, but relentless. How are you holding up? I asked, my heart aching for her. Numb 1 minute, furious the next, she said, her tone hardening. They showed me evidence. Robert's been siphoning money from my practice's retirement accounts. I trusted him to manage them because he was the financial expert. Turns out, he was funneling my money to fund his other lives. I wasn't surprised anymore. He did the same to Eleanor's gallery, Catherine's firm. It was all interconnected, each life propping up the others. They called it a closed-loop Ponzi scheme, Geneva said, her voice thick with disgust. Each household unknowingly bankrolling the rest. I've spent my career saving kids' lives, and now I find out my husband was stealing from me, from my colleagues, from the hospital where I work. Did they mention asset seizures? I asked, thinking of my own financial fears. Yes, she said, her voice catching. Most of our accounts are frozen pending investigation. They've left me my personal checking for living expenses, but everything else gone for now, including Olivia's college fund. My heart sank. Tyler's college fund had suffered the same fate. Another generation caught in Robert's web. Have you told Olivia yet? I asked gently. I'm picking her up from school soon, Geneva said. I've been rehearsing, but nothing feels right. Robert was supposed to visit this weekend, every third weekend, like clockwork. Olivia's been planning a father-daughter science project. She'll be crushed when I tell her he's not coming. Ever. The pain in her voice echoed Jennifer's, the same raw grief of children betrayed by a father they adored. If there's anything I can do, I offered, knowing how hollow it sounded, but meaning every word. Thank you, Geneva said softly. I'll let you know how it goes with Olivia, and thank you for reaching out. It's strange, but it helps knowing that I'm not alone in this. As we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, the Libertad pendant resting against my chest. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time I felt a flicker of strength, not in anger or vengeance, but in the choice to move forward, to redefine my life on my own terms. I offered my support to Geneva, though I was uncertain how I could assist from thousands of miles away across the vast Atlantic. My heart ached for her, tangled in the same web of betrayal I was navigating. There might actually be a way you can help, Geneva said, her voice tinged with cautious hope. She paused as if weighing her words. Would your daughter, Jennifer, be open to talking with me? I think it could help to connect with someone who's been through this, someone who's a bit further along in untangling the mess. It might give her some clarity. Her request stirred a mix of relief and apprehension in me. I thought of Jennifer, my vibrant daughter, grappling with the shattering truth about her father. I believe she would, I replied softly. She's even mentioned reaching out to you herself, though she wasn't sure if you'd be receptive. Geneva's response was immediate, warm yet laced with shared sorrow. It's more than welcome. We're bound by this chaos unwillingly, but maybe together we can find a way through it. Before we ended the call, I passed along Marcus's contact details, urging her to connect with him to align their legal efforts. She promised to reach out again after speaking with her daughter, Olivia. That night, sleep eluded me. My mind churned with images of Geneva sitting her 13-year-old daughter down, breaking the news of Robert's arrest, revealing the existence of other families, other lives he had hidden. I imagined Olivia's world crumbling as she learned the father she idolized was a stranger, a man cloaked in lies. My heart broke for her, and for Jennifer, who was only now discovering she had a sister, Olivia, a sibling she'd never known. The thought of them possibly connecting, building something fragile yet hopeful from the ruins of their father's deception, kept me awake. It wasn't the storybook ending anyone dreamed of, but it was the raw, messy reality we were all wading through, searching for meaning in the fragments. The next morning, an email from Gabriella landed in my inbox, stirring a whirlwind of emotions. She wrote of a small apartment in her building, available next month because the current tenant was relocating to Rome. It was more compact than my current vacation rental, but boasted better light, ideal for painting. The idea of staying longer in Florence sparked a rush of excitement, tempered by a flicker of anxiety. I hadn't planned to extend my stay beyond the initial month. Connecticut, with its chaos and heartbreak, still loomed in the distance, but Florence had become more than an escape. It was a sanctuary where I was rediscovering myself. The watercolor classes, the volunteer teaching at the after-school program, the simple joy of morning walks through ancient streets. They were stitching together a new version of me, one not defined solely as Robert's wife. I replied to Gabriella, expressing my interest in seeing the apartment, then headed to my volunteer session. The teenagers were immersed in a project about their aspirations, practicing their English by sharing dreams of their future. During a break, Lucia, a bright-eyed student, turned to me. Teacher Margaret, what was your dream when you were our age? Her question stopped me cold. What had I dreamed of before marriage, before motherhood, before 50 years as Mrs. Robert Wilson? I wanted to teach overseas, I said slowly, the memory surfacing like a long-forgotten photograph. To live in different countries, soak in new cultures. Marco, another student, chimed in. Did you do it? I shook my head, a wistful smile tugging at my lips. No, life pulled me elsewhere. Lucia's eyes sparkled with youthful certainty. But you're here now. Maybe your dream was just waiting for the right moment. Her words hit me like a gentle wave washing over years of deferred hopes. Maybe she was right. Maybe 70 wasn't too late to chase the aspirations I'd shelved decades ago. After the session, I wandered back to my apartment, lost in thought. I stopped at a cafe along the way, a place I'd come to love for its quiet charm. Ordering an espresso, I settled at my usual table by the window, a ritual I'd never indulged in back in Connecticut. The owner, recognizing me, smiled warmly. "Signora Margaret, always so thoughtful," he said as he set down my coffee. "You see more in an hour at this window than most tourists see in a week." His words warmed me. I had changed here, become more observant, more attuned to the world around me, the shifting light, the hum of conversations, the pulse of Florentine life. My watercolor instructor had noticed it too, praising my growing ability to capture not just a scene's surface, but its soul. Back at my apartment, an email from Marcus awaited, updating me on the legal proceedings. Robert's trial was set for 6 months from now. The FBI had uncovered another property, a cabin in Vermont, registered under yet another alias, hinting at another relationship, another life we hadn't yet unraveled. I braced myself for the familiar sting of betrayal, but it didn't come. Instead, a weary acceptance settled over me. Of course, there could be more. Robert's ability to compartmentalize, to deceive, seemed boundless. But each new revelation felt less personal, as if he and his actions were drifting further from the woman I was becoming. That evening, Jennifer video called with my grandson, Tyler. His face lit up the screen, his eyes brighter than I'd seen in weeks. "Grandma, Mom says you might stay in Italy longer. Are you going to become Italian now?" His enthusiasm made me laugh, a sound that felt lighter than it had in months. "Not quite, but I'm thinking about staying a bit longer." "That's awesome," he declared. "You can learn Italian and teach me, and maybe I can visit in the summer." The thought of Tyler exploring Florence with me filled me with joy. "I'd love that," I told him, meaning every word. After Tyler scampered off, Jennifer lingered on the call. "You look different, Mom," she said, her voice soft. More relaxed somehow. I nodded, feeling the truth of her words. "Florence has been good for me." She hesitated, then shifted topics. "I spoke with Geneva Harris yesterday. It was strange, but good, I think. We're meeting for coffee next week with Olivia. Is that okay?" My heart swelled with pride for her courage. "Oh, EJ, of course it is. Why wouldn't it be?" She bit her lip. "I don't know. It feels complicated, like I'm betraying you by connecting with Dad's other family." I shook my head firmly. "You're not betraying anyone. Geneva and Olivia are as innocent in this as we are. If it feels right to build something with them, you should." Her relief was palpable. "Thanks, Mom. I wasn't sure how you'd feel." I smiled, a quiet strength anchoring me. "I'm past being hurt by anything tied to your father. My focus is on moving forward, for me, for you, for Tyler." After we hung up, I sat on my balcony, watching the sun dip below Florence's rooftops. The woman who'd arrived here, shattered and grieving, was transforming into someone new. Or perhaps, as Lucia had said, someone who'd been waiting all along. The next day, Gabriella showed me the apartment. It was smaller, as she'd warned, but the north-facing window bathed the space in soft, steady light, perfect for an artist's studio. The tiny kitchen would need some creativity, but I could already envision it as mine. The rent was reasonable, a fraction of Connecticut's costs. "You can have a 6-month lease. A year, whatever suits you," Gabriella said, her eyes kind. "Month to month is possible too, for a bit more." I ran my fingers along the windowsill, picturing my watercolors lined up, the light illuminating my work. "I'll take it," I decided. 6 months to start, with an option to extend. Gabriella's face lit up. "Wonderful! I'll prepare the papers." As we descended the stairs, she asked casually, "So, are you staying in Florence for good?" I touched the key pendant at my neck, a symbol of my newfound freedom. "Not forever, maybe, but I'm not ready to return to Connecticut yet." She nodded, understanding flickering in her gaze. "Sometimes we need distance to see clearly." That evening, I called Marcus to share my decision. 6 more months in Italy, he repeated, his tone thoughtful. I see the appeal, Mrs. Wilson, but there are practicalities. The investigation is ongoing, and the divorce will eventually require your presence. I know, I said, calm but resolute. I'll return when I must, but for now, Florence is where I belong. He paused, then asked, May I ask why? I considered the question, letting the truth crystallize. Here, I'm just Margaret, not Robert's wife, not Jennifer's mother, not the woman whose husband ran a decades-long con. I'm discovering who I am outside those roles. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I understand. We'll make it work. Video conferences, powers of attorney. The courts move slowly. You won't need to be here for months. Grateful, I thanked him, then signed up for a Tuscan cooking class, something I'd wanted to try since arriving. The 3-hour session was intimate, a small group preparing a meal under a local chef's guidance. My partner Diane, a retired professor from California, shared her story as we chopped vegetables. Italy was our retirement dream, she said, her voice tinged with loss. After my wife Susan died, I almost abandoned it. But I realized she'd want me to live it for both of us. Her courage struck a chord. That took strength, I said. She shrugged, a faint smile breaking through. Grief gives you freedom. When you've faced the worst, other changes feel less scary. Her words echoed my own journey. Robert's betrayal had been my worst-case scenario, yet here I was, unafraid to build anew. We exchanged numbers, planning to meet for coffee. Another connection, another thread in the life I was weaving. The next morning, Geneva called with jarring news. The FBI found another woman, she said, her voice heavy. In Vermont. Margaret Harris, named after you, apparently. The detail stunned me, a twisted knot in Robert's web. Naming another woman after me, what did it mean? Does she have children with him? I asked, bracing for more siblings for Jennifer and Olivia. Not that they know, Geneva replied. She's younger, 48. Their relationship started 10 years ago. She thought he was divorced, living in New York, traveling for work. Another lie, another life. Robert's skill at juggling 5 relationships over decades was chillingly impressive. Have they spoken to her? I asked. Yesterday. She's devastated but cooperating. Geneva paused. Jennifer's coming for coffee tomorrow. Olivia's nervous but curious about her half-sister. My heart went out to Olivia, a child caught in this storm. How's she coping? I asked. Better than I expected, Geneva said, her voice catching. She's angry, confused, but resilient. She said at least now she knows why he missed her school events. The pain in her words mirrored my own memories of Robert's absences, now explained by his double lives. After the call, I sketched along the Arno, the river's light soothing my restless thoughts. Robert's deception had rippled outward, touching 5 women, 3 children, countless others. Yet healing was taking root. Jennifer meeting Geneva and Olivia, Tyler planning a visit, me finding purpose in art and teaching. 3 days later, I signed the lease for my new apartment and began planning the move. It felt like a deliberate step, not a flight from pain, but a choice to embrace Florence's possibilities. I committed to the volunteer program, teaching English twice weekly, and the director hinted at expanding into adult education. Would you develop a curriculum? She asked. Your experience would be perfect. The offer thrilled me, a chance to use my skills meaningfully. I'd be honored, I said, already envisioning lesson plans. That evening, Jennifer emailed a photo of herself, Geneva, and Olivia at a cafe. Their tentative smiles spoke of cautious hope. New connections, complicated, but good, she wrote. Seeing my daughter with Robert's family stirred a tangle of feelings. Grief for the pain that had united them, pride in their bravery, hope for what might grow. I replied, You all look beautiful. I'm proud of you for this. Jennifer responded quickly, describing Geneva's strength and Olivia's wisdom, so like Tyler's. We're having dinner next week with Daniel and Tyler too. Okay? More than okay, I assured her, my heart full. This family, once defined by Robert, was expanding, weaving in Geneva, Olivia, perhaps others, bound by shared survival. 2 months into my Florence life, I moved into the apartment. Gabriella brought plants, introduced neighbors, and helped me settle. I set up my studio, arranged my Italian books, and placed Tyler's origami crane by my bed. That evening on my balcony with wine, a quiet peace settled over me. Not happiness, but contentment, a certainty I was where I needed to be. Marcus called with news. Robert had taken a plea deal, pleading guilty to fraud, identity theft, and more for a reduced sentence of 12 to 15 years, a near-life sentence for a man in his 70s. He'd also revealing hidden assets, aiding recovery for me, Geneva, Jennifer, Victor, Eleanor, and the Vermont Margaret. It wasn't perfect. Financial and emotional scars would linger, but it was closure. When's it finalized? I asked. Next week, Marcus said. Then asset distribution begins. Your divorce should be final in 6 months. 6 months, when my lease would end, prompting another choice. Stay, explore elsewhere, or return. Once such uncertainty would have paralyzed me. Now it felt like freedom. Thank you, Marcus, I said. He chuckled dryly. This case is one for the books, but your resilience, Mrs. Wilson, it's inspiring. As the sun set over Florence, I reflected on my journey, from a suspicious phone bill to a new life in Italy. The old Margaret, defined by roles, was gone. The new one, artist, teacher, explorer, was emerging. Jennifer texted about the plea deal. How are you feeling? I checked myself, surprised by my calm. At peace, his choices, his consequences. I'm focused elsewhere. She replied, same here. Geneva and I were saying, the anger's fading fast. We're too busy. Her words rang true. We were rebuilding, crafting stronger lives. I touched my key pendant, Libertà, and smiled. Freedom was choice, agency. At 70, with a broken marriage behind and an open future ahead, I'd found it. My passport, hidden for decades, had been my first step toward liberation. Tomorrow, I'd paint, teach, and maybe meet Diane for coffee. In 6 months, I'd choose again, stay, go, or return anew. For the first time, I was the author of my own story, not Robert's shadow. The sunset painted Florence in gold, and I toasted to beginnings born of endings, to the woman who'd rediscovered herself, and to the unexpected journeys that led to meaning.